$1,246 up front across 3 years for the 0%. The Chromebooks that we saw was a percentage increase, so some of that is, do we want to outright buy them, or is the interest rate low enough that it's offsets? So that was like, this is 0, so that takes that application.
We also have to keep them current enough so that when we do updates for all of our testing, CDCs and stuff, that the software is updated. So if you start keeping them 4, 5, 6 years, they don't update, we can't do the state testing exactly.
And this is for how many iPads?
I believe 300 to 350.
Yeah, I think it's
somewhere in
around
that
300
ballpark.
iPads.
That's 2 grade levels.
It would also cover teachers.
So what I'm assuming is next year you're going to want to do the same thing to replenish for the next.
Yeah, and next year we wouldn't
2
necessarily
classes.
have to replace or replenish for those teachers that got them. This takes care of all the teachers up front.
And the students take
K through 5.
And I would say one of the caveats here is this is one of the cycles was purchased with ESSER funding, so it was never in the budget. I believe the next cycle of Chromebooks is already within the budget scope, so it would just be the difference between what we have budgeted for Chromebooks versus what iPads would cost. So that would be, I believe, I would have to double check that. I believe this is the last of all the leases that are not currently in the budget. So all the other ones that we have ramped up and accumulated in the budget, this is the last one that we purchased outright 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
And this leasing program will make all the devices all the same.
At the elementary school.
It will, no, it will go Apple.
Oh,
it will go
across the
board,
board.
across the board Apple. After a few years of changing out
Weaving it in.
Chromebooks.
Okay.
So then back to the financing options, obviously the first option is if the committee would want to designate a tax increase to that. Obviously we do have tech reserve fund balance for that. So we could use the 45.5 for 3 years. Currently there's $500,000 in the tech reserve fund balance. And then the last thing is to be able to lock this in and have devices for next year. We are asking if the finance committee will make a decision yes or no, so that can be on May agenda. That quote was good up to the May agenda.
Yeah, I think I looked at Dr. Naylor's most recent quote, and I think it's valid through May 23rd. So it would encompass the May.
There has to be an action.
There would have to be a recommendation.
Either
from the
a
committee
recommendation
move
to use the tech reserve and fund that, or to say we're going to wait.
Well, we originally wanted to put it on hold and wait another year because the Chromebook price went about $30,000 in 1 week, remember that? And that's what the whole thing started. But if we've got a better deal and what the teachers want, and we have a tech reserve fund, I'm okay with this.
So that would be, it's kind of a twofold ask. It's one, are we looking to push this Apple lease forward? And two, what would be the financing option attached to pushing it forward? And
Where you just said it.
Well, that's my
yeah, that's
opinion.
one consensus of the committee of what their recommendation.
That's what his tech reserve fund balance is for the next meeting.
So you would like to see that go to that result? Okay. Right.
Technically.
Okay.
So we'll put it on. We'll have this similar discussion with the full board, and the financing option that the committee has recommended to the cabinet. All right. So then the second portion of this is the elementary alternate classroom. So the proposal from Dr. Gatsby was 1 teacher and 2 teaching assistants. And it's roughly $275,000. And then the options that were provided from Dr. Gatsby was we can do an in-house option, we can do an option through the IU, and we have a private institution. And each of those has escalated costs with each of the options above in-house.
And since that conversation, we've talked with Dr. Piasky and asked her to research a little bit more about the IU offerings, what that would cost, what that would entail, what could be provided. So we currently know that we don't have any placements available to send those students outside the district, so that cheapest, the lowest cost to the district is off the table. The next one is the in-house, what we're recommending here. The next one is the IU, and the next one is the private school setting. So if I can have Dr. Piasky to talk about what options are available to us. Actually, before you do that, why don't you talk to us about what is provided to those students and what those students need? why it's a specialized and special instruction.
So this particular group of students, like in learning support, there's different levels. We have itinerant level, which is students who spend the majority of their time, 80% usually out in regular ed. And then there's full-time, which is they're with learning support students all day long, which is considered the most restrictive, which is not what you want. We want the least restrictive environment for our students. So then there's the middle option. So this group of students needs that middle option where they would get some time out in regular ed. They could go out to special classes, recess, lunch. They could sit in a science class. However, their science and math is a very direct programming for them. These are students who have language barriers, who are behind in language, so their program is very one-on-one, quick pace, direct in language and math, which is the most essential thing. So that's the component that these students need. They are that supplemental middle ground student. So that's what this class would support them with. So also, as Dr. Mitchell said, as of today, I reached out to all my colleagues and the IU. So locally, all the Adams County school districts have taken back their autism classes. So the classes that the IU used to have no longer have locally anymore. There's one left, but next year, Kanawha is taking that one back too. So locally, Adams County, there's no LIU autism classes, except the ones that are based, like York Learning Center, and those are full-time students. As I said, in order to go there, you have to have a severe need to go to a full-time based program. York Learning Center, Franklin Learning Center, or even that third option, those programs, the third option that I shared with you, that particular placement, those are all learning support students in that room. Those are full-time placements. So again, that's not appropriate for this group of students. So these students would have an autism classroom here in the district, the teacher, 2 aides working with them one-on-one throughout the school day, supporting them, going out to specials with them, doing direct instruction with them, just providing that least restrictive environment here at the district.
And how many students do we have that we're looking at for next year?
So since I spoke to you last, it's one more, so now we're up to 6. Because I cannot, year 2 we have to bring back, because Spring Grove needs their spaces for their students. And now I have 4 incoming kindergartners that I know about. This is what happens over the summer, throughout the year. I just kind of look at what's come in over the years, kind of estimate, take an average, but you don't know. And that's like in all disability categories. Students move in, I have to find a life skills class or an MDS class or a very therapeutic emotional support class. So you just don't know what's coming in. So right now I have 6. 2 first grade and 4 kindergarten for next year.
Thank you, Dr. Bianchi. Any questions for Dr. Bianchi? Thoughts?
So are you saying the only other option is the private institution?
It's not necessarily it's an option, but it's not an appropriate option.
And you're saying that's the only other option?
It's not, because I don't have, yes, that's not an appropriate
It's
option.
another option available.
Because I can't,
LIU doesn't exist, can you tell us?
they don't have autism classes. School districts, like for example, Spring Grove has an autism class. The IU does not have any Adams County autism classes anymore.
Is there anything in York?
No. The Learning Center, York Learning Center, a school-based, center-based program for the high needs full-time, but not that middle ground. Because all school districts, again, even Southwest, they had their own classes, they took all their classes back.
So what I'm hearing you say, Dr. Piassi, is that we've got some students need some small support, 20% maybe, support during the day. Some need full-time support with learning support, but the students that we're getting next year that are autistic need supplemental support, meaning they need to be required by law to be in a placement that's the least restrictive so that they can receive education with their peers, but at the same time receive between 60 and 80% of the day that specialized instruction that they need for their diagnosis.
And I'd say additionally that the IU no longer supports autism classrooms, districts are now supporting all autism classrooms, which is,
And none of the other districts in York or Adams County will take any of the kids.
They need them for their income population.
Yeah.
So that's who I usually reach out to, Tonawanda, Upper Adams. If they need for their
See,
school.
like Southwest
Fairfield,
Spring Grove, Littlestown,
Well, Spring Grove, I could take them back.
other North.
Those are the two I have to bring back.
Nice.
I would say it's a constant struggle. I'd love to talk to you about that, a constant struggle about losing placements, finding new placements, kids coming in to the district.
And this is not going away. As recently as a few years back, the number was 1 in every 150 diagnosis was for autistic or autistic on the spectrum. And I'm not sure what that is today, but I believe that I heard it's 1 in every 100. So it's becoming more prevalent. Autism and students on the autistic spectrum are becoming more easily recognized, identified, and then we need to be able to provide the appropriate supports for them.
Are you going to surplus this year like you normally do?
That we'll find out through all.
Of course.
Of course.
So I'll just come back to the financial options. Obviously, like always, we have a tax increase. One of the caveats that Jeannie asked was, what do we have allotted towards the students now? Dr. Piastri and I sit down every budget and we estimate how many kids we currently have in placement and how many we think we're going to have about coming year. That is attributed to essentially a dollar figure or a kind of a pot of money that we can spread around as placements come and go. If we boil it down to what a per pupil estimation would be, it's around that 20,000.
I thought when you showed us last time, it was 55,000 per student in-house, 75,000 if you send it right.
That's if we take the 275 divided by how many kids are in the classroom. So that's what our per pupil cost would be, not what we have budgeted.
Well,
So
you would have had more than 20,000 budgeted at the time because you didn't know you were doing this in-house option at the time when you budgeted.
I think you're asking
You would
two
have had more
different
than
things.
20,000.
Yeah. So for those students that we normally send out somewhere, we have money that, just as Mr. Shover shared, money in a pot, and we try to identify about how many kids are going to go out.
Right.
So we break it down by that amount. So we had budgeted and prepared in the 25-26 budget $20,000 per student for those placements, like in Spring Grove. What you're
But
talking
you knew it was
about,
going to be more than 20,000. Why would you only budget 20,000?
what you're talking about is the in-house program.
No, I want to know what's already in the budget, and you're telling me it only costs $20,000 to send each student out?
That's what we budget for per student for outside
So you only
placement
have
for any
$40,000
disability.
in the,
No, we didn't say that. For 2 students, it's $40,000.
that's what you have in the
That's
budget at the time, because you only know 2 at the time.
20,000 per student.
We only
don't
know 2
anticipate
coming back.
only
Right,
2
I'm saying, when
several
you
other-
created this budget, you didn't know about the other 4. So 2 are budgeted,
We did not have any,
but you knew you had 2 this year, so you
Right.
would have had the 2 in the budget for next year.
correct, which is, it's a pot of money to
Yep.
be used
Right.
as kids come and go. So
Right, so.
if you boil it down to a per pupil basis, it would be essentially 20,000.
How much should we pay Spring Grove this year for the two?
But that's what we're saying. And
For the
you
2
said it was a
that we-
lot more
About
than
30,000.
About 30.
But that's not what you told us last time.
Some,
Some districts charge different prices.
so some charge around 10,000, some charge around 30,000, some charge around 45. It just depends. So we equate it to an average of about $20,000 because Adams County charges different than York County, which charges different than
Yeah.
Franklin County, which is the IU. So we give a pot of money per kid that we think we have coming and going through the district. 4 of these kids were unknown, which is part of this. 2 of them we did not know how to bring back. So the money that was attributed in next year's budget is 20,000. So we have 40,000
20,000 per
Per kid.
per all 6, or 20,000
per 2.
2 that we knew of.
Correct. 4 of the unknown we have no budgeted amount currently because they were unknown. Until
20,000
registration.
sounds really low compared to what you showed us last time.
This is brand new, so the
I'm
confusion,
not
I think,
confused.
so the confusion is, what we did with Dr. Fiaschi, because I worked with her on that, is we took the 275 and said, if we have 5 students, here's a per pupil cost for us to do it. Not what we have in
You
the
listed
budget.
all three of them, you said it was 55,000 in-house, and that was the cheapest.
Correct, that's it. So we identified that 1 teacher and 2 teaching assistants and some supplies is 275, 5.
275.
That's
Right, I'm saying, and you had 55,000
That-
per student, and that was the cheapest. And
That's-
then you had higher amounts, it was like 75,000 per student.
No,
or
that's
5
not off the
institutions.
The problem is that was a non-budgeted number we gave you.
But
This is we're looking to add,
I understand that, but
Only-
you had at least 2 in the budget that should be subtracted.
which is
Because
40,000,
it's not an additional 200.
which we're saying is $40,000. It's not 55 per
Sounds
student.
awful weird to me, okay.
We're saying we can do it in-house
I know
for
what
kids
you're
at
saying.
55,000.
And the cheapest option is not the in-house, the cheapest option is to send students out
To another
to another
school
district.
district, because they already have the program, they already have the kids. Just like we showed on the thing, if we brought in more kids in-house, or more kids from out in other districts, our costs would also reduce. And it would be, but they already have the full classroom, they have all 8 kids, or they had 6 of their own plus 2 of ours, so that's the cheapest option. If they're paying for 6 of the kids, they're only prorating it for 2. For us, we're taking all 6 kids, and we're taking the brunt of that. So we have to take the majority of that. We can supplement that classroom if we have 2 open spaces with other district children to then help reduce our costs. So I think that's the difference is,
So what is your estimation for the class load for pupils going into this with the current reality?
currently we have 6 identified. We identified the classroom can hold a maximum of 8 students.
Okay, so you had 2 that we knew about and 4 that came in online this year.
Correct, and we could potentially have more students come in at any point in time from now throughout the whole school year next year. And we could be in the same boat where Spring Grove is with us that says, we now have more kids, we can no longer accept yours. That's the reality of special education right now.
At the last meeting, there were the LIU, the Work Learning Center was on, so you're saying Work Learning Center will take these?
They're not full-time students that need a center-based program. I have to have a need to send them to a center-based program. And they do not fit that qualifications for a center-based program. It's not the least restrictive environment. So for example, those 2 kids who are at Spring Grove, they currently spend some time out in regular ed, but they're also in the autism class. So there's no reason to put them in a center-based program where they're never around any regular ed students. So that's the most restrictive.
What percentage of the time are they in regular ed versus special ed?
Well, supplemental is any between 20 to 80% of special education. So itinerant is 80% out in regular ed, supplemental is anywhere between 20 to 80. Full-time is 80 and above.
What are the qualifications for an autism classroom teacher?
Well, what I'm looking for is somebody who has experience, who is ABA, ABA is applied behavior analysis, which might have some experience in VB mapping, which is a specific program that we use with students, who is very caring and understanding and understands the needs of the students. Learning support teachers, have that qualification. A lot of them just fall into autism and then enjoy it. There's some experience doing those programs.
So the certificate would be a learning support certificate.
Learning support certificate, yes.
How easy is it to get someone, because there is teacher shortages and that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I know that's everybody.
Who knows? I mean, I read,
We're having
Well,
pretty much-
Bermuda just hired,
Yeah.
Judy said Bermuda just hired one.
I know.
Oh, Kanawha just took some of the IE teachers. They wanted to go work for a district, so they came over.
How many learning support and special ed teachers do we have at ACES?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And what do all of them do?
They work, 1, 2, 3 of them work with other supplemental students. And then the other 3 work with regular itinerant learning support students, basically 5.
to the itinerary that they're listed on.
Mhm.
Just like add food.
Correct. Those teachers go in the classroom, provide support in the classroom, they pull the students, work on individual skills, progress monitor them. And then the other three teachers, their students are supplemental. They do go out, that's the intensive learning support. But the autism class is a different need, academic need.
Do you foresee a problem staffing this program?
The biggest problem I see at this point is finding TAs, paraprofessionals. I believe, as Dr. Fiaschi said, there are professionals that want to teach autistic support classes. A family friend of mine went to college, couldn't get a job in a school district, and began teaching in a private school autistic students. And then wound up getting a job at a public school where she's currently doing that. So there are people who specifically do this. I would say, knock on wood, we've been pretty successful so far in finding replacements for our current staff that we know that are out.
Is it high turnover?
Is autistic support a high turnover?
Meaning, is a staffing issue, is it a high turnover?
I've not known it to be. Like I said, I think